Hi, I'm Jason and welcome to DS University. In this video, we are going to cover the steps on how to rebuild the E128 Medicator pump. It can be performed with the pump still mounted to the wall. It's best to perform the rebuild in a clean area, so make sure to cover your chemical bucket so you don't lose any parts. To start, you will need a 3mm Allen wrench, diagonal pliers or cutters, thread seal tape, small towel, flat blade screwdriver, the replacement pump head, and the installation kit. The simplest way to perform maintenance on the E128 Medicator pump is to run fresh water through between uses. This helps to prevent buildup inside the foot filter, tubing, pump head, and injection valve, and allows for these components to last longer. Pump head. Before rebuilding the E128 Medicator pump, disconnect the unit from the power supply and turn off the water. First, remove and discard the 4 white caps at the corners of the pump head. This can be done with your finger or a flat blade screwdriver. Underneath the white caps are 4 screws. As we continue, please pay careful attention through the removal of the used pump head and connected tubing. Using the Allen wrench, loosen each screw, but do not entirely remove them. Only loosen until the pump head can be removed by hand from the pump itself. Do not remove the pump head yet. Locate the used rigid discharge tubing connected to the old injection valve. Keep the tube upright to ensure no remaining chemical spills out. Use the diagonal pliers or cutters to cut the tube as close to the old injection valve as possible. Set the diagonal pliers down and use the same hand to remove the pump head along with the connected tubing and foot filter. They should all come off as one piece. Once removed, check the back side of the pump head to see if the blue O-ring is in the groove. If the O-ring is there, then discard the pump head along with the blue O-ring, connected tubing, and foot filter. If the blue O-ring is not there, still discard the pump head, but check to see if the blue O-ring is stuck to the E128 pump. If so, remove and discard the blue O-ring now. This can be done with your finger or flat blade screwdriver. Using the small towel, wipe clean the diaphragm and any other chemical-stricken parts on the pump. Unscrew and disconnect the old injection valve from the T. Take the new pump head out of its bag along with the 4 new small white caps. Set the white caps aside. Turn the pump head over so you are looking at the back side of the pump head. Check to see if the large blue O-ring sits in the groove. If not, look to see if it fell out in the pump head bag or call Dilution Solutions for assistance at 1-800-451-6628. Insert the large blue O-ring into the groove on the back side of the pump head. Discharge valve. Open the installation kit, take out the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing and set it aside. Remove the discharge valve tube nut, 1 large collar, medium-sized nozzle, and a small blue O-ring from the pump head bag. If the discharge valve connections are already attached to the pump head, then remove the discharge valve tube nut, collar, and nozzle from the discharge valve at the top of the pump head. Set the collar and nozzle aside, and make sure not to lose them. Hold on to the discharge valve tube nut since you will need it for the next step. Slide one end of the rigid polyethylene discharge tubing through the outside opening of the tube nut. Slide the collar onto the tube, and make sure the collar's crown is pointing away from the tube nut. Grab the nozzle and insert the pointed end into the opening of the same tube. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Place the small blue O-ring on the top of the discharge valve. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the discharge valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Suction valve. Remove the larger, clear, flexible PVC suction tubing from the installation kit and set it aside. Remove the suction valve tube nut, 1 large collar, medium-sized nozzle, and a small blue O-ring from the pump head bag. Ignore the extra pieces in the bag since they are not used for the E128. If the suction valve connections are already attached to the pump head, then remove the suction valve tube nut, collar, and nozzle from the suction valve at the bottom of the pump head. Set the collar and nozzle aside and make sure not to lose them. Hold on to the suction valve tube nut since you will need it for the next step. Slide the tube connections onto the loose end of the PVC suction tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Place a small blue O-ring on the bottom of the suction valve. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the suction valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. To install the new pump head, align it so the Y shape points upward on the Editron. Use the Allen wrench to carefully hand tighten the 4 pump head screws in a crisscross pattern until evenly snug. Do not over-tighten. This keeps the head aligned and on straight. To finish up, take the 4 new small white caps you set aside earlier and put one over each screw. Injection valve. Grab the injection valve out of the installation kit and remove the tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Set these items aside and make sure not to lose them. Take the thread seal tape and wrap it around the threads of the injection valve for the necessary size, either 3/8 or 1/2 inch. Install and hand tighten the injection valve into the installation saddle or T in the supply line. Once again, do not over-tighten. Next, grab the rigid polyethylene discharge tube connected to the discharge valve. Using diagonal pliers or cutters, cut the tube so that it runs comfortably from the discharge valve to the injection valve. If the tubing is too snug, the tubing connection will come loose and produce a leak. Reattach the tube connections onto the loose end of the connected discharge tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Attach the tube and tube connections onto the injection valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Foot filter. Next, cut the PVC suction tubing connected to the suction valve so that the foot filter comfortably sits in the chemical bucket in a vertical position. Grab the foot filter from the installation kit and remove its tube nut, collar, and nozzle. Only hold on to the foot filter tube nut since you will need it for the next step. Set everything else aside, but make sure not to lose these items. Slide the tube connections onto the loose end of the PVC suction tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Let the PVC suction tubing along with the foot filter tube nut, collar, and nozzle hang from the pump head. Grab the foot filter and shake it back and forth. You should hear a ceramic ball moving freely inside. If not, separate the foot filter into 3 pieces by popping the filter basket from the filter body. The filter seat may stick to the filter body. Make sure it rests in the filter basket instead to avoid losing the ceramic ball. Set the filter body aside and locate the ceramic ball in the filter seat. If there is no ceramic ball, call Dilution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Pull the filter seat out of the filter basket and set the filter basket aside. Pour the ceramic ball out of the filter seat and into your hand. Set the filter seat down and use a small towel to wipe the ceramic ball clean. Do not misplace it. Put the ceramic ball back into the filter seat and then put the filter seat back into the filter basket. Insert the filter basket into the filter body and forcefully pop them together. This may take a couple of tries. Please be sure not to misplace the ceramic ball. Pull on the 2 sections to make sure they are connected securely. Shake the foot filter back and forth once more, verifying the ceramic ball is moving freely. Grab the PVC suction tubing hanging down from the suction valve and attach the tube, foot filter tube nut, collar, and nozzle onto the foot filter by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Place the foot filter into the bucket or stock tank. This ensures the foot filter draws chemistry once you begin operation. Air bleed barb. Finally, take the smaller remaining PVC tubing out of the installation kit. Locate the manual air bleed barb on the upper left section of the pump head and slide one end of the PVC tubing over the barb. Using the diagonal pliers, cut the tube so it's long enough for the chemical bleed off to go into the bucket or stock tank. The E128 medicator should now be ready to connect to the power supply. Go through the priming process and begin your next use or treatment. We hope this video has been helpful in rebuilding your E128 medicator. For more information, please call us at 1-800-451-6628 or visit us online at dilutionsolutions.com. To see other videos, check out our YouTube channel. I'm Jason at DS University. Thanks for watching.